Welcome. This is Dr. Angela, and today I'm going to be covering a little bit about glyphosate since there are so many of us that are finding out that we've been exposed to it and that it's in our body. What I wanted to cover today is what the heck is glyphosate, where is it found, what's it doing in my body, and how the heck do I get rid of it? So thank you for being here, and I hope I answer your questions in the presentation. If not, I'd love to hear more from you, and I'll address it. So here we go. All right, so glyphosate is the world's most widely used herbicide. Monsanto originally brought it to the market in the U.S. in 1974 under the trade name of Roundup, but today it's manufactured by many companies and under many different names. Generic names in other countries. Glyphosate, together with other additives, is used to kill weeds, especially annual broadleaf weeds and grasses that compete with crops. Farmers quickly adopted glyphosate, especially after Monsanto introduced glyphosate-resistant Roundup-ready crops in the late 1990s, because it allows farmers to kill their weeds without killing their crops. In order to do that, a bacterial gene was inserted into a crop so that it wouldn't die when it got exposed to the glyphosate, while the other weeds around it would. Then Roundup-ready genetic modified crops were introduced. Those include soy, corn, canola, beet, alfalfa, cotton, tobacco, and peanuts. They're currently being called genetically engineered as opposed to genetically modified. And wheat, while it's not genetically modified, it is highly hybridized, which means that the genes have been altered throughout the last 40 years, and it is also heavily sprayed. In fact, Roundup is often used as a desiccant on wheat. It's a drying agent that's sprayed heavily on the crops at the end of their growth cycle in order to make it easier to harvest. It also is used as a desiccant on other plants, including wine grapes, and its glyphosate then is heavily found in milk and dairy due to the wheat, corn, and soy that are often consumed by those cows. When a plant is sprayed, the glyphosate is often taken up and incorporated into its own tissues. It's incorporated into their proteins, and unfortunately, it does the same thing in the human body. In 2007, glyphosate was the most used herbicide in United States agriculture sector, and it's the second most used in home and garden, government and industry, and commerce. In the United States, the use of Roundup is unregulated. You can buy it at any hardware or garden store at any time. By 2016, there was a 100-fold increase from the late 1970s in the frequency of application and the volumes of glyphosate-based herbs that were applied, partly in response to the unprecedented global emergence and spread of the glyphosate-resistant weeds. And those weeds have now even grown stronger and resistant to glyphosate, which is why we have a new generation of killing chemicals coming into play. Monsanto's last commercially relevant United States patent for glyphosate expired in 2000. Enlist Duo is one of those stronger chemicals designed to take over where weeds have become resistant, and it's a combination of glyphosate and 2,4-D, which is a dioxin chemical previously known as Agent Orange. It's as like we don't even have any type of protection in place for consumers anymore. These chemicals are easily allowed onto the market and are rarely banned once they get on the market. So where is glyphosate found and what's it doing in my body? Glyphosate's been found in home and gardens and in public places such as parks, schools, and natural habitats. It's also been found widespread in our food supply, including baby food, milk, wine, juice, in non-food products derived from GM cotton, and in our water supply. Glyphosate has gotten into our surface and underground water supply through excess application and runoff, and now it's in our rain cycle. This has broad-ranging environmental impacts. Fungi and other plant diseases and dangerous algae blooms will continue to increase as the beneficial bacteria in the soil and water are killed. We may see continued elimination of certain wild plant, animal, bird, insect, and reptile species dependent on soil and water. You guys have probably heard about some of these dangerous algae blooms that have been happening over the past couple of years. Our local watershed has been closed on several occasions to dogs. We can't walk our dogs there because several dogs have died after drinking the water that had this dangerous algae bloom on the surface. And that's only going to keep happening more. Ways that we get exposed to glyphosate include ingestion through food, water, milk, juice, or wine, absorption, things like skincare and beauty products, clothing or products made from GM cotton, water from the shower or bath, and laying on sprayed surfaces such as lawns or grasses at the park. Injection, many vaccines have been found to be contaminated with glyphosate, and the possible mechanism there is due to the animal products or plant oils that are contained in the vaccines themselves. And inhalation. Aerial spraying has been used in Latin America, Colombia, and Argentina, as well as the US. Household dust can be brought in by pets, children's clothing, and shoes after walking on, sitting, or playing in glyphosate-contaminated areas. And while Monsanto has assured consumers and consumer safety panels for decades that glyphosate is safe for human consumption, long-term studies were stifled, results weren't allowed to be made public, and synergistic toxicity or potentiation was never studied. And that's when two or more chemicals are added together, as in the case of products such as Roundup, each can cause the other to become more toxic. There are currently no laws requiring disclosure of glyphosate use on any products in the United States, despite the fact that in 2015, the World Health Organization labeled glyphosate as a probable carcinogen, and that's a substance that's capable of causing cancer in living tissue. In the same year, California passed a law to require the labeling of glyphosate as a probable carcinogen, but that's likely only going to be found on Roundup packaging or other chemicals known to contain glyphosate, not on the parks, schools, yards, or food that it's been sprayed on. And by the way, Monsanto has been suing California ever since they passed that law. So, glyphosate has been discovered in 93% of urine samples in the United States. And while glyphosate is being measured, oftentimes we don't even know what the other chemicals are that it's been mixed with. And it's this combination which is showing the potentiation or the possibility for greater damage. So how are we testing for glyphosate? There's several labs that offer glyphosate testing via urine or blood. Several of you on listening to this webinar have already participated in the Great Plains lab that measures glyphosate, and that's the scale that you can see here on the screen. And then there's also a group that's doing measuring called the Detox Project, and you can learn about them more online. They offer glyphosate testing as well. And they're looking at samples across the United States to further continue studying how infected people are in different regions. Glyphosate-containing herbicide formulations interfere with human body functions in the following ways. Energy production in the mitochondria is disturbed, and without ATP that is produced by the mitochondria, we get tired, we get exhausted. There's compromised function of important minerals such as sulfur, manganese, zinc, and copper. Glyphosate holds on to the minerals in the liver, and it disrupts the red blood cells' ability to hold on to vitamin C in reduced states. It can even turn into oxalate. Immune system is compromised. Beneficial gastrointestinal bacteria are killed via blocked shikimate pathways and are replaced with non-optimal organisms. There's increased incidences of celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Escherichia coli or E. coli have developed a resistance to glyphosate by replacing it with alanine, and that may also play a role in E. coli antibiotic resistance. Bile acid metabolism is negatively impacted. Without bile, we cannot break down and receive nutrients from food that we consume. Folate or folic acid metabolism is disturbed. Folate metabolism and methylation is the basis for DNA replication. DNA methylation plays an important role for epigenetic gene regulation in development of diseases and cancer. Endocrine systems are disrupted. The pineal gland, which impacts melatonin and sleep, the adrenal gland, which decreases hormones such as DHEA and sex hormones, and estrogen and other sex hormone metabolism is therefore disrupted. It disrupts the aromatic amino acids such as phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, histidine, and thyroxine, which is T4. It disrupts cytochrome P450 enzymes, which interferes with detoxification. And in fact, the liver, the combination of glyphosate together with the other additives causes our body to not even be able to get rid of the glyphosate itself. It shuts it down. So the liver defers to using glutathione to try to reduce and remove it. So those folks who have high levels of glyphosate likely also have depleted glutathione levels. There's a teratogenic impact, which is where it disturbs the development of the embryo or fetus, resulting in congenital malformations and birth defects. Current research is looking at how glyphosate may substitute for glycine in muscle or myosin, resulting in chronic fatigue, proteins, which result in prion diseases, and it prevents proteins from being broken down, which creates things like amyloid plaques. And lastly, there's cancer concerns. Possible cancers linked to glyphosate exposure include non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, renal tubule carcinoma, pancreatic islet cell adenoma, and skin tumors. So, how do we get rid of this thing called glyphosate? We can start by reducing personal exposure. Step 1 is eating a 100% organic and biodynamic diet. And biodynamic imitates self-sufficiency of nature. For instance, in biodynamic farming, they avoid pests based on biological vigor and planting diversity of crops rather than using chemicals. In addition, we would be drinking reverse osmosis water. Next, we can use something like EWG or Environmental Working Group's Guide to Healthy Cleaning in order to identify potentially harmful chemicals in and around your home. You may have glyphosate-containing chemicals. You may have other chemicals around the home that, again, if you're exposed to them in addition to having glyphosate in your body, it's even harder for your body to detoxify. So getting those chemicals out is critical. Next, we could also use EWG.org or Environmental Working Group's Skin Deep Guide to helping identify potentially harmful chemicals found in your beauty and skincare products. And lastly, we can eliminate clothing, underwear, gauze, tampons, diapers, toilet paper, or other materials made from genetically modified cotton. The treatment of glyphosate toxicity should be centered on determining the route of introduction and avoiding further exposure. So how did we get it in, and what are the things that we can do to avoid getting it in further? So, in further detoxing our body, we need to know whether or not we've been chronically exposed to glyphosate. So, if you're doing this, if you're listening to this webinar because you've already done glyphosate testing and you know that you have high levels and therefore you haven't been detoxing properly, your initial detoxification may be more intense. And to do that, I would recommend that you work with a local functional medicine doctor or learn how our team might be able to help support you. Next, we all have to become good at lifelong habits of detoxing since we do not have a government agency protecting us as consumers from the chemicals. We're all exposed to them on a daily basis. It's our job to make sure to keep methylation supported and to take small actions daily to help our body remove these chemicals. Things like bentonite clay, which can help bind free-floating glyphosate, which hasn't yet been incorporated into our tissues. Drinking sauerkraut juice to help our microbiota. Using fulvic and humic acid to try to replace disrupted minerals. Using herbs such as dandelion and barberry to help with sulfate transportation. And as well, we can use supplemental sources of sulfur such as lipoic acid or methyl sulfonyl MSM. We can cook with herbs such as parsley, thyme, and basil. We can eat plants that are phytonutrient rich, which are high in polyphenols and probiotics. We can use sunlight. Vitamin D3 improves immune and detox functions. And lastly, we can use infrared light or IR sauna. Some great research there showing benefit in helping improve detoxification. So many people might ask, how in the heck did we get here? And Dr. Huber, he's a soil scientist who originally started working around the issues of glyphosate, said that we ignored the scientific precautionary principle for too long. The precautionary principle basically states that if an action or a policy has a suspected risk of causing harm to the public or to the environment, in the absence of scientific consensus that the action or policy is not harmful, the burden of proof that it's not harmful should fall on those taking an action that may or may not be a risk. In other words, before a chemical could come to market, the manufacturer would and should have to prove that that same chemical does not cause harm. And if they're going to bring a combination of chemicals to market, as in Roundup, they have to prove that that combination of chemicals doesn't cause harm. Next, we have to talk about cleaning up our environment. So first, we have to clean up our own bodies, but second, we really have to work on cleaning up our environment so that we have a future on this planet. There's individuals like Hendrikus who have a great and ancient understanding of soil chemistry that has come from generations being passed down through his family. And he used this knowledge to create resources which are capable of healing our soils, which needs to happen soon before it's too late. But more wisdom needs to be created for the healing of our oceans and our water. That is absolutely critical in order to get it out of our rain supply and stop destroying our natural resources. So for further information about glyphosate and about some of the research that's been provided on these slides, I encourage you to use any of the following links. For the PAN report, Dr. Stephanie Seneff's research, which there's quite a bit you can find on her pages there, and she also has many YouTube videos available. Dr. Anthony Samsel, again, he's a researcher in the glyphosate arena, has published many papers. Some of the links are available here, and he also has other YouTube videos available. Don Huber, and he is the soil scientist. There's a YouTube presentation of him here, and again, he has others available. And lastly, Moms Across America, who have been doing research about glyphosate contamination, percent of contamination in humans, contamination in wine, contamination in childhood vaccines, and more. And if you're concerned about your glyphosate exposure, please, please, please go back through the detox steps and recommendations that are listed above. And if you have current levels, you can retest them again after about 3 months to determine whether or not you're sufficiently reducing those levels using these steps. And if you'd like to learn more about how you can work with our team, you're welcome to schedule a 15-minute complimentary discovery call to find out whether or not we'd be a good fit and whether we can support you. And you can use that link here to do so. Thanks for listening in. I truly hope this helps you understand more about what might be going on in your body and how you can take care of that. And trust me, you're not alone. I started this venture by sharing with my group the fact that I too had very, very high glyphosate levels come back in my blood. And that's what started us down this path. I've been eating practically organic for 26 years. There's definitely places that I need to improve. And I know for many of those years now that my methylation was not properly working. So I too am on a path for daily healing. I wish the very best to you. Thank you so much.